All right, got a model on the screen, and this is pretty tricky to blend out. These are all single span surfaces that I built that are connected, and now I want to blend out these edges. I want to have a large radius running through here, and I want to have a large blend between these two surfaces running all the way through smoothly, and then finish it off following these edges with a small radius. Now, if we use the automated tools for this, you'll see that it will not produce very good results. So let me copy this over for you. So if I select those, join those, now I can run the fillet edge command. And if I select this, this, and this, and I look at the preview, you'll see that this is all disjointed. Like Rhino doesn't really know what to do here. You get all this bad geometry, so that doesn't work. If I try to do this instead, like that worked, but you'll see that if I continue down that path, and I do this next, not that, now it just completely fails and I don't get a good result at all. So this is not the way to go about it. I find that in almost all instances, unless it's like super easy, I consider these secondary surfaces, and I would blend these out by hand. So let's do that. So just visualizing the end result will help you determine the strategy on how you're going to tackle this. And with filleting, it's always best to work from the largest radius to the smallest radius. And in this case, I know that I want a large radius through these two corners that are identical. I want to have a large blend through here, and then I want to have a small radius that runs along this edge. Now, I've already built this before, obviously, and so I know that in this case, this is a good place to start. So if I join those, go back to the fillet edge, select both of these edges, and I want to have distance between rails as my option, not distance from edge, not rolling ball. This keeps the distance the same, so that gives me a really nice fillet that is aesthetically pleasing. And I want the edges to be apart 10 millimeters. I want trim on, I have to preview on, so I know what this is going to look like, and I'm going to accept that result. So now you'll see right off the bat that the ISO curves for this thing and this thing don't line up. That may or may not matter, but since we're building this by hand, we can actually improve on this quite easily. So if I explode this out and delete the results that were generated automatically, now if I put a blend curve in between these edges with curvature continuity, that's one, and then that's two. Now I can create a sweep surface in between those that will actually use these trimmed edges for my boundary conditions. And you'll see immediately that because these were both single span surfaces, even though this is a trimmed edge, it's respecting the isoparm distribution. I've got these changed set to curvature, and I'm going to accept that. Now, because this is a symmetrical model, we can actually mirror this guy over to the other side. And that's over the y-axis, so accept that. Now we'll bring that back. And so now I have this edge complete. Now the next thing I want to do is have a very smooth blend for this whole front fascia. And this edge that we've just created, I want that edge to wrap around this corner, and then I want it to follow this, the edge of that front face. Now there's actually quite a nice tool to do this. So I need a circle, and I need a circle that goes through a curve. And I want it to go through this curve. Actually, I have to, hold on a second, I gotta merge these edges. Select edge to merge this guy, all, yep. So now I can go back to my circle around curve. I want this curve, and I want it to go through that point. And I want it to be coincident with that point. So now what happened is it created a curve that goes through this, and is coincident with that edge here. Now you'll also see that the radius is 6.353. Now we can remember that, but we don't have to. We can kind of delete this, and now I'm going to repeat this process because I want it to be at the edge, at the end of the edge here. So I'm going to do the same thing, and I'm going to select a curve on this edge, and you'll see it remembered the last radius input, which is what I wanted. So I'm going to accept that result, and then I'm going to sweep a profile all the way along this surface. That's my cross section. That's good. And so now I have this trim surface, and if I turn everything back on, you'll notice that it doesn't quite meet the edge here, and in order to split it, I need it to be extend past the edge here a little bit. So I'm going to extend that out a little bit. 2 millimeters probably enough. Yes, it is. Repeat that for the other side. And so now I can split this face, and this face with that tube, and then I can create my blend surface in between that. So let's start with that. Split that out. Objects to split. These 4 faces. Accept. Select my cutting objects. That's the tube that we just created. Select that. I no longer need this. I can delete that, and then I can also delete the trimmed out faces. So now the next thing we want to do is, because we want to have a blend surface that goes all the way across, and I need to have something, an edge to build here. So I need a helper surface between this guy and that guy. So we've trimmed those back. I'm just going to isolate those, and then I'm going to put some blend curves in between those. So I'm going to have a blend curve from there to there, curvature, accept that, and I'm going to have a blend curve from there to there, accept that. And now I can just put a sweep 2 in between with these as my rails, and then these as my cross sections, and then we can set the A and B edges to curvature, accept that. And this is just a helper surface for me to create this edge so that I can have a blend surface between these guys that have some geometry to be tangent to. And so now I'm going to put in a couple more blend curves on the edges from there to there. Accept that. Repeat that. Go from there to there. Accept that. And so now I can put a blend surface in between these. I'm going to use the sweep 2 again. That generates a really nice result. I'm going to chain edges because I have 3 edges here that I want to have together. I'm not going to turn auto chain on, but I have chain continuity set to tangency. So it's like 1, 2, 3, enter, bottom 1, enter, and now I need my cross sections, those 2 guys, and here's my result set to curvature. Yep, I'm going to accept that. That looks good. So now I have this really nice edge at the bottom, and I have this nice edge at the top. So that's good. So we're actually almost there. Now we just need to trim back this edge so that we can create the blend surfaces in between. And the way I'm going to do that, I'm going to reorient this. I'm going to isolate these guys. Isolate, and I'm going to I actually don't think I need to stitch them together. I'm going to put a pipe over that, and I'm going to chain edges, and I'm going to turn auto chain on. Chain continuity set for tangency, so it should pick up everything, and it does. Start radius 3, end radius 3, accept that. And so now I have this surface that we're going to use to trim back these edges. Now again, like, it's not extending past the surface boundary here, so we're going to need to extend that out a little bit. Extend surface, yes. And we probably need a little bit more. I'm going to go with 5, and that just pushes it beyond the edge, so that's good. Repeat that. Do the same for the other side. It remembers 5, and we're going to accept that. So now I already know that I want to use this pipe to trim back all these surfaces, so we can go into split right away. And then the objects that I want to split is this, 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 and this. Accept, enter. I want to use that as my split surface. If I hide this for a second, these we no longer need. We're going to create our fillet surfaces around those, turn everything back on, and so now we need to trim back this guy, that guy, and that guy. Isolate that. Oh, sorry. Undo. we do need the one that we're going to trim with. Isolate, split, and I'm going to split this, this, and this, except that's my cutting object, except. So we no longer need that, can get rid of that, can get rid of this, and we can get rid of all of this. If we turn that back on, the helper surface can go away as well. Select all my curves, turn those off. So now we can just fill this gap, and that's actually quite quickly. I'm going to hide this for a second. So we're going to need some more blend curves, and from there to there, curvature, that's one. And then from there, I'm going to use the top edges on this case. There, accept that. And so now I want a blend curve to fill this square. And this is one contiguous edge because it was one surface and there's no split in it. But I want this edge to follow this this edge. And so if I turn this to my front view really quick and change that to surfaces, change object layer so we can see it a little bit better. In the line tool, you'll find there is a tangent from curve, and I want to point on the curve. I'm going to use this edge, and I'm going to use it from the end. I'm going to scoot it all the way down. So now this line is tangent to this edge, and I'm going to project this curve onto this surface. Don't need that. So now if I turn that to 3D and get my blend curve back, I can go from that edge to that line that we did. Oh, picked up the wrong edge. Repeat blend curve, that edge from there. And there's my curve. So now we have these segments set up, and because it's symmetrical, we can mirror them over at a later point. So let's build a couple more surfaces. I'm going to use sweep 2. I'm going to start with this edge, this profile, that profile, accept, curvature, yes. And then next, I'll get it started, but I already know that I got to do something here. You'll see that what I said earlier, that this edge is a continuous edge, and I want this to be a four-sided profile between these, 4 boundaries. So I'm going to split this edge with the split edge command, and I'm going to split that edge at that point. So now this edge is split, and I have a nice four-sided boundary, and we can use sweep 2 again to fill this boundary. And I'm going to use the surface edge as the cross section for that, and we'll set it to curvature. And so now I have these two sides, and I can mirror those over, and then we have a nice four-sided patch left that we need to blend in. Now I'm going to turn this on, extend surface. I want to extend this guy a little bit. Surface edge, let's just go 1. Go back there, isolate those guys, and trim. Select cutting objects, those two guys. Oh. No, it's not doing it. I think I may not have a proper intersection here. We can fix that. Turn that on. This curve. Project the surface. Trim. Turn that back. This may not be 100% fit, but we can fix that later if necessary. I'm just going to keep going for now so that this doesn't get too long. Select my curves, hide my curves, front view, and I want to mirror over this guy, and that guy. Mirror, and I want to mirror across the y-axis. So now I have my final four-sided patch. I'm going to turn off my ISO curves here for a second. Makes the view, cleans the view up a little bit, and I have a really nice four-sided boundary here. Now I know, again, sweep 2. If I select this edge, it's going to, continue past it because we didn't split this here. We couldn't because there was no geometry in order to split it, and so we can split that edge, split edge, and now that we have some geometry there, it's easy to split, and then we can just use the sweep to command to fill this up as well. So 1, 2. So these we can set curvature. This is my profile, that's my profile. And then you can already see, I'm going to turn on the isocurves again for a second, that the isocurves are very well behaved. They all follow this very, very nicely. They all look really good. Because we used sweep 2, this and this is actually not 100% matched. Like the isocurves behave really well, but you probably want to do some matching individually to make sure that this is a better match. So if we stitch all this together for a second here and turn on the zebra maps, we'll see this is actually quite good, but there are a few small breaks here at the edge. You can see it's pretty decent, but we can probably get that better with some matching. So let's explode that out. And the way you do that is with the match surface command. And you have to find an untrimmed edge, which is, in this case, we want to match this guy to that guy. Tangency is all we want. We want to keep the other end positioned, because otherwise it'll peel away from this surface and you'll lose continuity there, and we accept that. So if we stitch these back together and turn on zebra, we see that the result is better. You can tweak this to your heart's desire and get it all perfect essentially, but for now I'm going to just put everything on my surfaces layer, change object layer, and I'm going to stitch those guys together, turn off the isoparms for a second, and you'll see that we have created this really nice well-behaved blend. The blend here starts large and it basically goes around the turn here, and here it just fades into this surface, and then you have that small radius fillet that runs all the way around very nicely, uninterrupted edge flow, and you get a really nice result. This is a pretty tricky corner blend to blend out, and there's lots of other examples that have like similar techniques, but I figured it was worthwhile showing you guys, and hope this helps. Cheers.